Given that I'll be the primary inhabitant of our new abode, it only makes sense that the largest room becomes mine, she declared confidently. From that moment onward, she staked her claim on our new home with the assertiveness of a seasoned owner. Her brazen remarks ignited a storm of indignation within me. "Pardon me, but I'm curious, where exactly would your room be if you're so insistent?" I countered, unable to contain my irritation. Upon hearing my retort, my sister-in-law flushed crimson and launched towards me. "I'm Sophia, a 32-year-old corporate professional. George, my husband, and I have been inseparable since high school, celebrating 7 years of marriage. Perhaps owing to our extensive shared history, our relationship resembles that of an old married couple more than most couples our age. Nevertheless, I can't fathom being with anyone but George. I've always had a great rapport with my in-laws, and presently we find ourselves cohabiting for various reasons. With my father-in-law on the brink of retirement and my mother-in-law juggling part-time work, we share household responsibilities and contribute to the financial upkeep of the household." Things were cruising along smoothly until an unexpected visitor disrupted the tranquility. One lazy Sunday, as we savored the serenity of the weekend, the jeering sound of a truck reversing shattered the peace. Curiosity piqued, we exchanged puzzled glances. "Did anyone order something?" As she barged in with an entourage of movers, my heart sank. "My room's on the right, second floor," she declared, oblivious to our surprise. "Oh, and I seem to have misplaced the key. Could someone let me in?" A chill ran down my spine at the unmistakable voice. As we approached the front door, there stood Charlotte, my long-absent sister-in-law, flanked by movers lugging cardboard boxes. "Wait a moment, Charlotte. What's the meaning of this sudden appearance without so much as a heads-up? And who are these people with you?" I questioned, a mix of surprise and irritation coloring my tone. Charlotte seemed genuinely perplexed by our reaction. "What do you mean? I quit my job and found myself jobless, so I'm moving back home. Since it's my parents' house, I didn't think it necessary to inform you guys beforehand." "Heh," she explained with a carefree shrug. We stood there dumbfounded, while the movers behind her exchanged uncertain glances. "Never mind them, just get on with moving my stuff in," Charlotte instructed nonchalantly, striding confidently into our home and up the stairs. "Ha, my old room's been turned into a storage space. Get this stuff out of here." Her sharp voice echoed from the second floor, leaving us bewildered. "What do we do now?" I turned to my husband and in-laws, their expressions mirroring my own frustration. "Let's hear her out first and then figure out a plan to get her to leave. Given her stubborn nature, she won't budge if we simply ask her to," my father-in-law suggested wearily, his demeanor suddenly aged. Reluctantly, we piled Charlotte's belongings in the hallway, buying time as we deliberated our next steps. Charlotte's petulant expression was all too familiar, her sulking demeanor grating on my nerves. "Oh, and why are George and his wife here? Are you guys crashing with mom and dad because you're broke or something?" she jabbed, her words a sharp reminder of her tactlessness. Charlotte's derisive snort dredged up a flood of unpleasant memories. She was 2 years my junior, yet my disdain for her stretched back to her high school days. Our shared alma mater was the source of our initial acquaintance. I vividly recalled Charlotte's audacious approach during our student years. "You're George's girlfriend, right? Well, since I'm your sister-in-law, why not lend me some money?" she had brazenly demanded. From that very first encounter, she had shown a blatant disregard for boundaries, addressing me disrespectfully despite my seniority. Her audacity didn't stop at her presumptuous request. She even had the nerve to casually ask her own older brother for money. My response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. Though she bore the title of my boyfriend's sister, I refused to indulge her entitled behavior. Charlotte's reaction to my refusal was predictably disdainful. "Geez, you're so stingy," she retorted, her words dripping with disdain. "Damn," she shot me a disdainful glance before striding away. "You're the crazy one here." That encounter marked my unsettling introduction to my sister-in-law, Charlotte. As it turned out, her behavior towards her own family was even more troubling, a fact my in-laws had been grappling with for quite some time. Her tumultuous history in school was a constant source of concern, prompting frequent summons for her beleaguered parents. Even after graduating, Charlotte remained adrift, her days characterized by idleness and mischief. At our wedding, her antics reached a new low. Her excessive drinking led to a state of inebriation, during which she shamelessly flirted with any man who caught her eye. And as if that weren't enough, she took it upon herself to critique my bridal attire with a pointed, mocking remark. "That dress doesn't suit you one bit," she jeered, followed by a burst of laughter. It was a moment I'd sooner forget. Following her disruptive behavior that day, Charlotte's relationship with her own family deteriorated to the brink of estrangement. Her departure, fueled by anger, left a bitter aftertaste, yet to everyone's astonishment, she resurfaced years later as though nothing had transpired, leaving our family utterly bewildered. "It's because our lease at the old apartment was up. But our new house isn't ready yet, so Dad graciously let us stay here," George clarified, casting a fond glance at Charlotte. "You're building a house, George." "Impressive," Charlotte remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. "When George and Sophia's new house is ready, we'll be moving out too, Charlotte," my mother-in-law stated icily. "How can you be so heartless toward a daughter who's just endured a breakup and is jobless? Is that how you define motherhood?" "Moving into George's new house signifies a fresh start for us," my father-in-law added, his voice tinged with resolve. "You've always favored George over me," Charlotte shot back at her parents, her footsteps heavy as she stormed up the stairs and out of sight. According to Charlotte, she had experienced a breakup, lost her way, and found herself returning home in search of solace. Since that day, Charlotte's presence shattered the tranquility of our family life. Our lifestyles clashed on multiple fronts. Her late-night, boisterous phone conversations with friends often sparked heated arguments between her and George. Despite shirking any household responsibilities, Charlotte never hesitated to voice her culinary preferences. "Fish? I hate them. Too many pesky bones. Can't you whip up some meatloaf instead?" she'd interject. Fed up with her intrusion, I finally confronted Charlotte. "If you crave meatloaf, kindly prepare it yourself or perhaps contribute to the household expenses. How does that sound?" Charlotte's perpetual attitude towards me only exacerbated the tension. My disdain for her ran deep, so I maintained a formal demeanor whenever interacting with her, a subtle reminder that I wasn't one of her casual acquaintances. Yet she persisted in addressing me only as "Hey" or "George's wife." In response, I resolved to reciprocate by addressing her solely as "Hey." Fully aware of her aversion to fish, I confronted her about her lack of contribution to household expenses. "Why should I chip in for my own living expenses? You're nothing but a leech, surviving off George's earnings and my family's support. Don't act so entitled." Charlotte's audacity left me speechless. "Seriously, is that how you perceive it? And how's the job search and apartment hunt going?" "Our new home is nearly ready," I countered. Her face flushed momentarily before she retorted with a smug grin. "Don't worry, I've got it all figured out," her tone dripping with self-satisfaction. In the midst of our heated exchange, my mother-in-law, Susan, appeared visibly concerned. "Sophia, dear, I'm truly sorry if Charlotte is causing you distress. Are you all right?" she inquired, her worry evident in her voice. Dealing with Charlotte had taken its toll on everyone, her stubbornness making it nearly impossible to reason with her. "I'm all right, Susan, but you should take a break too. It seems like Charlotte has gotten the wrong end of the stick." "Is everything all right?" I asked, concern evident in my voice. Susan's response was a heavy sigh. "Even her father and I can't get through to her. She just barricades herself in her room and tells us to stop badgering her. I sometimes wonder if she'd emerge if we set off a bug bomb," Susan quipped, eliciting a chuckle from me. After days of anticipation, our dream home was finally complete. George and I had poured our hearts and souls into saving for the down payment, and now the kitchen bore my personal touch, while the bathroom had been transformed into a haven for my husband's love of long baths. It truly was our dream abode. As we immersed ourselves in the joy of unpacking and settling in, the doorbell interrupted our reverie. Expecting George's parents, I glanced at the monitor to find Charlotte tagging along. I really don't want her invading our new space," I muttered, unable to suppress a grimace. Charlotte swaggered into our freshly minted abode, her demeanor oozing with arrogance. "George really outdid himself. This place is quite spacious. Nothing beats a brand new home," she proclaimed boldly. She proceeded to fling open doors to various rooms without so much as a "by your leave." My irritation reached its peak, and I was on the verge of giving her a piece of my mind when George's father intervened. "Hey, that's impolite," he scolded her sternly. Unfazed, Charlotte pouted and retorted, "What's the big deal? This is going to be my place now, isn't it?" George wasted no time in shutting down her presumptuousness. Cut the nonsense. You don't have a room here, do you? He snapped. But Charlotte persisted, undeterred by George's firm tone. If my parents are moving in here, then technically, this becomes their house, right? So I do have a right to be here, she argued brazenly. We stood there, dumbfounded by her audacity. It became painfully clear that Charlotte had been eyeing our home as her own from the very beginning. Furthermore, she boldly asserted, since I'll be the one spending the most time at home, the largest room here belongs to me. Charlotte's audacious declaration triggered something within me. Your room? I echoed incredulously. Let's see, shall we? With a calm demeanor, I gestured towards the storage shed outside, typically reserved for garden tools. Even if I were to go out of my way, the only space I could possibly arrange for you would be that old shed. And naturally, you'd still be expected to pay rent. Frankly, I'd rather not have you in our new home at all. Could you please leave? Charlotte's face flushed crimson upon hearing my words. Are you serious? She exclaimed, making a move toward me. Fortunately, my husband George intervened swiftly. That's enough, Charlotte, he interjected firmly. Stop causing unnecessary trouble. In stark contrast to his sister's tumultuous nature, George remained composed and level-headed. The only one he'd ever raise his voice against is this woman, Charlotte, who never seems to have any respect for her older brother, George retorted firmly. As our father-in-law's authoritative voice boomed down, even Charlotte fell silent. Charlotte, cut the theatrics and listen up. We're not moving in here, and you need to come to terms with the fact that our old home is gone, George asserted. I couldn't help but stifle a chuckle as I glanced at Charlotte, whose expression resembled that of a startled deer caught in headlights. From the outset, Charlotte seemed to assume that George and I, along with her parents, would continue living together in our new abode. However, that wasn't the case. We had been informed some time ago that our parents were planning to sell the family home and relocate to the countryside. The reason was plain and simple. We're just tired of dealing with Charlotte's antics all the time. We want to enjoy our retirement in peace, our mother-in-law had expressed her frustration. Charlotte had stormed out of their old home, declaring, I never want to set foot in this house again. I don't consider you guys as parents to me. Just disappear already. Living with Charlotte had taken a heavy toll on my in-laws. Her volatile temperament had led to numerous conflicts, some of which even resulted in legal disputes. Despite her reckless behavior, Charlotte remained unrepentant, leaving her parents to foot the bill for settlements. To cover these expenses, our mother-in-law had taken up part-time work, the financial burden imposed by Charlotte weighing heavily on the family. George and I had done our best to support them, striving to maintain some semblance of peace in our lives amidst the chaos. However, Charlotte, seemingly oblivious to the havoc she had wreaked, showed no gratitude towards her parents. Instead, she only sought their assistance when it suited her own needs. My frustration with her behavior had reached its breaking point. Then I'll just move into your new house with you guys, or I'll end up on the streets, Charlotte finally admitted, a hint of panic evident in her voice as she confronted the truth. Enough, Charlotte. The answer is a resounding no. We've tried to reason with you countless times, but you've refused to listen. Did you honestly believe we overlook everything simply because we're your parents? We're not immune to hurt, Charlotte. We have emotions too. And let's not forget your own words. You guys are no parents of mine. Just disappear already. Our mother-in-law's tone was icy as she addressed Charlotte, whose expression betrayed a mix of shock and realization. Observing Charlotte's crumbling facade, George and I exchanged a knowing glance. Dad, Charlotte's return wasn't prompted by heartbreak or job loss. Sophia and I are fully aware of the truth, George asserted, causing Charlotte to visibly pale. In reality, Charlotte was involved with a married colleague, he continued. She knew about his marital status but chose to continue the affair nonetheless. And when his wife discovered the truth, the affair imploded. Both Charlotte and her lover lost their jobs due to the scandal. They're divorced now, and coincidentally, your lover's wife, who happens to be my friend, crossed paths with me recently. Seeing her after such a long time, I was taken aback by how much weight she had lost. Enjoy your role as a homewrecker. I couldn't help but lash out. You know there's a special place in hell for people like you. Tears threatened to spill as I grappled with the weight of the situation. My husband and I had discussed it, but we hadn't broached the topic with my in-laws yet. We were afraid of upsetting them. No, it's not like that. I fell in love with him, and I couldn't help it. Charlotte defended herself with the same tired excuses that cheaters often use, her gaze chillingly indifferent. Glancing at my in-laws, I could see the fury in their eyes. Without a word, they swiftly escorted Charlotte back to their home. Later, my in-laws informed me that my sister-in-law had resorted to doing household chores in a desperate attempt to gain their approval for moving into their new home. However, their sentiments remained unchanged. "Pack your things and leave," my father-in-law repeated like a broken record. "Why? I've been working hard around the house. I've been doing laundry and vacuuming. What more do you want?" Charlotte finally erupted. "There's nothing special about what you're doing. It's basic self-care. Did you expect to be praised for that? You're an adult," my mother-in-law retorted sharply. My sister-in-law blushed, adding a layer of embarrassment to her already wounded pride. "I already made my will. All inheritance will go to George. There isn't much left because of you. You've been written out of the will. It's likely to be approved by the court," my father-in-law declared, leaving my sister-in-law visibly stunned. As my in-law's moving day approached, coinciding with my father-in-law's retirement, my sister-in-law had drastically downsized her possessions to just one suitcase. According to my mother-in-law, she had sold off most of her belongings for cash. As we bid farewell to my in-laws and turned to head back to her car, my sister-in-law inexplicably followed us. "What's the matter?" I asked, puzzled by her presence. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Please, I want to live in your house too. I'll take the small room." But more than her plea, it was the term "sis" that sent shivers down my spine. I glanced at George, and it was clear he shared my sentiments. "Hell no. Live with us. Not in your wildest dreams," he retorted bluntly as we made our way to the car and drove off without a second thought. A few days later, while enjoying a quiet day at home, the doorbell interrupted our peace. Seeing the figure on the other side, we both let out a resigned sigh. "Stop bothering us. Do you want us to call the cops?" I warned as I opened the door, only to find my sister-in-law standing there, her desperation evident as she knelt before me. "Please let me stay. I've been bouncing between hotel rooms and odd jobs, but I can't keep living like this," she pleaded. My husband and I were taken aback by the depths of her self-imposed predicament. "I don't care. We're not family anymore," I asserted, attempting to close the door. However, she clung to it stubbornly. "Just give me some money. I've maxed out my credit cards, assuming my parents would bail me out again. And I have alimony to pay, you know. If your friend is really friends with my lover's wife, maybe she could help negotiate a lower payment for me," she implored. We had no desire to engage with her, but her audacious selfishness pushed me over the edge. "Don't push me. I've never encountered someone as despicable as you. Stay away from me. I never want to see your face again," I snapped. Despite her insistence, she refused to leave. Suddenly, her face drained of color as she noticed our dogs barking from inside the house. "Wait, you have a dog?" she questioned, taken aback. We had adopted one of the 3 puppies from my parents' dog. "Would you like to see it?" I offered. Her reaction was immediate. "Who? What? No way. I can't stand dogs. You must be insane to live with one. Count me out of this house," she stormed off, her anger palpable. To be honest, my sister-in-law harbors a deep aversion to dogs. According to George, a childhood incident where a large dog playfully chased her left her traumatized, instilling a lasting fear and dislike for dogs. "Thanks for scaring off that lady, Maron," I murmured, giving our toy poodle a gentle pat. Since then, we haven't crossed paths with my sister-in-law. However, a friend mentioned spotting her in worn-out attire in a distant town. Her current circumstances don't concern me. Frankly, I hope she faces some hardships. George and I are relishing the tranquility of our new home. His parents seem to be thoroughly enjoying their rural lifestyle, occasionally reaching out through video calls and visits. They've managed to keep their address concealed from my sister-in-law, preventing any unwelcome surprises. Both appear healthier and happier, as if a weight has been lifted off their shoulders. A few months after settling into our new abode, we received a wonderful blessing. A baby is on the way. I had heard that stress could impact fertility, which may have been a factor in our previous struggles to conceive. Now, we eagerly anticipate the arrival of our newest family member next year. Gazing at George, his joy evident, I gently caressed my growing bump, filled with hope that he'll remain by my side through all our future endeavors.